shelves I was organizing with what do you call it? Electronics. Luckily, didn't get rid of any. This is the last time we did a good cleanup. So what I'm really here to do is just kind of give a brief update of what I'm doing. I'm going to show a snippet from a diagram from the book called Business Model Generation, a really cool resource and book. I suggest anyone who's interested in business takes a look at it. So this stream is going to be pretty short. This is just mainly to catch people up and to kind of keep myself giving myself a kick in the ass to get work done. At the moment, I'm still working on my strategy, and I probably should close this because it's unnecessary. So let's just take a look here at the business model canvas that the business model generation has provided. And this is a badass way of just kind of looking at connections between specific aspects of a business and how they refer to these concepts: revenue streams, cost structure, key resources, channels, uh, which could be supply chain, I believe. And so I've actually read through this book once recently, and I'm about to do it again. Um, Key partners, key activities, value proposition, like what is that real value you're bringing, which is the hardest thing for me to really wrap my mind around. So I'm actually going to take paper and I'm going to go ahead and start sketching this on my own, kind of like I did the original roadmap. So without further ado, oops, I don't want to give away too much free content or else I can get sued. Would be no bueno. So this is my draw.io for my roadmap. When we last saw it, it was really something. I had storage chain, I had people chain, which is originally human chain, and my friend was like, dude, that seems like human centipede. I'm gonna remove my Streamlabs because I like to see myself like a weirdo. Um, and then we have my Pride and Joy community stream, which is made simply because Akita, a specific streamer who um, really showed me some of the corruptness or just like kind of the greed of social media, where it's not really there for the people who are trying to be social, the people who are trying to build communities or just have communities already and are actually just letting YouTube profit off of their hard work. That's just the truth of it. So, and they don't. And so let me walk through all this because I'll kind of get through the community stream. So there's a blockchain network that is called Substrate. It's working on lib peer-to-peer, lib P2P library, and that is a protocol. And the reason it's a protocol is because it's a specification that's still in flux, but it's been written in many languages and can support many different use cases, which is key. In my opinion, it actually abstracts the communication between two people in a way or two computer systems away from the metal, the machine level. So I've spent my day this morning listening to Clean Code, I believe is the dude's name. Really cool guy. Really, he's an older gentleman, and he goes through the history of coding languages, and it's really valuable. Anyone who's developing should learn history of our industry because it gives a lot of perspective on where we are today and where we may end up tomorrow. And so one of the big topics was the fact that most paradigms have been explored with language, or at least software textual language, because truthfully, Java versus Scala versus C Sharp, there's really not much difference. So Substrate solves the problem of a compute layer or a WASM engine, so you're able to run functions on behalf of someone else with a coin concept. And that's what frustrates me about blockchain is this concept of tokens and how they relate to quote unquote coins. Tokens are a really vital part of blockchain. They allow for decryption of a message on a ledger. But at what point is that decryption mechanism not enough to keep out brute force? And secondly, why would you hand the consumer the crux of your security? From an implementation or just coding standpoint, the encapsulation of that concept should be handed to the server or service or program, not the person, because you don't want the person to make the mistake of losing the hard drive, losing the keys, and whatnot, right? They should be aware that we are a token-based security system, but what isn't at this point? Whether it's cookie-based, whether it's really any kind of form of encryption or login or authentication. We're really using some long cryptographic token, or not even cryptographic. Sometimes just an object with a expiration date, like a Java Web Token, JWT token, where you deserialize it and it just gives you a date and a couple other pieces of information you shove in there, and your front end can do logic based on that. I think it's wicked lame. I think it works. It does work. It's used in the industry. I personally developed it, personally worked with it, but that's not what I want to get in the business of. So without further ado, Substrate is a really cool name, and Human Chain, People Chain sucked, and Storage Chain sucked. And my CFO guy, good friend of mine, Aaron, I refer to him as my money guy, CFO guy. He's like the rationale with monetary spend. Uh, is really the fact that those not only those names suck, but they're too tied to blockchain. Blockchain has been an abused concept. It will be critical to creating a serverless cloud compute platform, if you will, to compete with Amazon, to compete with Microsoft, to compete with Google, while possibly using their infrastructure, but showing the code that really secures it down, showing the method in which we can accomplish these tasks and give our clients and users confidence that it's as secure as we can make it. So I started looking for foundation or something like, because substrate as a concept is like an underlying like substance, or like what is everything made with, right? So I used the word foundation, and I found synonyms. And stratum, which I worked at a company called Cubix Transportation Management System, and we worked right under ooh, Jesus, I'm so sorry, that's loud. My Legend of Zelda notification sound. We worked with underneath the floor where this company called Stratus Cloud Services, Stratus, existed. So Stratum, when I saw it as a synonym to Substrate, really clicked, and I was like, this is the name, because immediately I saw substratum as a word that is the foundation under the foundation, right? So that is going to, substratum is what storage chain was. No longer are we referring to the thing as a chain, because it's not a chain. We're using Web 2.0 technologies to accomplish some of these login capabilities. I want to sell that to Okta or Auth0. I don't want to be in the business of security in that fashion. I want to be in the business of node to node, peer to peer security. That's the business I want to be in. And more specifically, with Substratum in mind, I want to be a storage mechanism. So I found actually front end UIs for file storage, like almost like Plex server has, and they're free. People have done some amazing UX work where you just plug in a file system interface and bam, the front end UI just shows you and can manipulate it. So my goal is to adapt those UIs to the Substratum technology stack and spin off a company and many other companies that follow suit, one of them being blobchain.io. Blobchain is going to be my ugly UI. It's going to be the circular loader where it fills up the top to the circle, kind of like what I'm thinking of is if you've ever played Diablo, like their health bar. Nothing fancy, because there's so much to do within this one part of the network. This is the foundation of the foundation, which will eventually become a compute layer to compete with Amazon Web Services, things like that. Yeah, no thanks, dog. Edelden Foon 136. I don't really love bots, but thank you for watching. I'm not in search of followers, just kind of projecting my nonsense out into the world. But thanks for viewing, bot or not. So the general idea is I want to compete with Amazon Web Services. Snowflake just became an IPO, and Warren Buffett says it was innovative and something he believed in because simply it competes with Amazon Web Services, it competes with Microsoft, it competes with that range of infrastructure as a service, software as a service kind of a deal, right? But here's the issue with those companies. They don't show you what they're running on. So when clients say, how do you secure your application? You can just say, oh, I use the simple queuing service by Amazon. And they're like, okay, what layers of encryption? Like, and the truth is, at a certain point, you go, well, it's up to Amazon. And some companies don't find that to be good enough, and I don't find that to be good enough. So what my goal is to start with a storage layer that is secured using interplanetary file system, which is a Merkle-DAG storage structure file system. Merkle-DAG is one of the core concepts that blockchains are built on, Git is built on. It's how you create checksums for content, for code, text, files, you name it. Um, and it's not an easy concept, let me tell you. This is not. This is what I enjoy to do, is research these kind of concepts. But I'm certainly in over my head in certain ways. So I'm gonna have to rely on others as well as find the right people to be able to work with me. Dude, this is so uneven. Fuck me. This is nuts. Um, I'm like constantly repositioning this stuff because I realize my eyes are crooked or some shit and I just can't get this right. So what I'm gonna do here is move that over like that. Okay, so I'm an idiot. We'll just go right up against the square. There's a reason they give you squares. Yep. 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 Let's move it over one. Move it over one. There we go. So it's touching. Let's do this. It's touching. There we go. Okay, so let me just move that over one more. So the general idea here is substratum is a storage layer. And at the end of the day, queuing all these concepts that are web service, what you need is to be able to add a message and know that it's not going to go anywhere. And be able to have that message be retrieved and an action be done according to whatever that message is. So Order Database gives a really cool concept on top of the file system called IPFS, where I'm going to have to secure the IPFS protocol more concretely. It has private network capabilities. Its security is pretty badass, honestly, with its TLS implementation for SSL encryption and a lot of other concepts that are very necessary for modern server security or web application server security. So my goal is to really bulletproof IPFS and then run that bulletproofed IPFS or hardened IPFS with Orbit database technology, which allows a feed. That feed is a fucking queue. It's a queue. You ask for all the messages that exist, and it will hand it to you one by one by one. So you can have things subscribed to the queue or the message stream, and it will take actions based on it. So this will create a more reactive structure to be able to have applications that rebuild themselves or can migrate, etc. And I think it will be critical to the cloud offerings or infrastructure offerings that Stratum, the network itself, above it, will have to offer. And there'll be concepts for contracts. I'm kind of thinking in my head, and I've realized I looked it up. Mycelium is my name that I'm going with because mycelium is an like as a fungi, it is like an economic system. When the plant gives it sugar, it gives it other nutrients, and it trades between other plants. It's the internet for plants. It's fucking nuts. So I think it's a really cool way to be honest in the fact that not every node, not every plant, not every concept is equal. Different mycelium contracts will be necessary. I want to be able to offer my own nodes for use. Use it like a server. You know how much it costs. You're paying the bill. But when we get to offering it to others, like Amazon Web Services does, we're going to have to use real metrics from bandwidth to transfer to running time, all those concepts to the user. And I think the way Amazon's done it is great, but they're using still traditional server concepts on top of something that really is a giant mainframe that runs many servers to run on behalf of it. And we've done virtual machines to be able to make that easier, but I really believe virtual machines are now the past. So virtual machines really changed how we compute. Java was able to be created on it, the JVM, and we're able to take images of our state of the machine that we had built that took a lot of effort and able to make sure it runs that way every time, and that's badass. But there's a new concept which is called WebAssembly, and it's really, and a lot of languages have this, where it is a virtualization of either a machine or language in itself. So when we follow solid principles or just really good principles for development, we typically are expected to write an abstraction. That's what I believe interplanetary file system has done. It doesn't matter what you're running on. It doesn't matter if it's running in the browser. It doesn't matter if it's running on Linux. It doesn't matter if it's running on Azure or Windows. It doesn't matter. You just say run, and either a Docker instance was going to boot up the Linux that they're comfortable running it in, that they know works well, or it's going to run in WebAssembly using Rust, which is something I'm targeting. So WebAssembly brings a virtualization of instructions, but for browsers, and it's huge. It's absolutely fundamental to where I believe the change in the internet and the way that we do things today. It's just coming. It's going to happen. So what I want to take advantage of is every browser has the capability now to do work on behalf of others or for themselves. Now, when we talk about the server client or the client server paradigm, the client should always be mistrusted. It should not be trusted. They're going to send us malicious things. We should be able to react on those. We should be able to filter them out. So the server client architecture will still need to be preserved. We're going to have a client that dispatches calls or actions to the quote unquote server. But instead of it being a server, it's going to be another peer. Whether I'm running the peer in an Amazon Web Services headless browser, or I'm running the peer on someone else is running the peer on by accessing my website, we're going to run the functions necessary to do the work we need to do to show the user the result. In a way that is secure using WebAssembly and just as fast as any hardware will allow it. Without coins, I think coins will become a thing. I think they're going to be something that mycelium contracts could output. But I don't want to get in the business of compensating users for using the website. The biggest thing that we've dealt with in this industry is the fact that nothing's free. Servers cost a lot of money. They cost electricity. They cost internet. And when you're grouping them at a warehouse, data warehouse, holy shit, the amount of bandwidth you use. You have to own an electrical company and the internet ISP just to provide enough electricity and enough bandwidth to support your clients or support your customer base or their customer base, right? So what this will allow is kind of really distribute how we program and make it more fault tolerant, most importantly. So this concept of networks or peer-to-peer networks is critical to blockchain, but also critical to serverless architecture. Being able to know you have a quote-unquote peer or a entity that can do work for you or store things for you is huge. We've worked very hard just to get those concepts bulletproof in the server paradigm, and I'm finding that IPFS in more of the networking layer is really trying to abstract that out and secure it. So, and they're doing a great job. They're using some of the most badass technologies, plug and play. It's just built in. And if you're willing to see some of its attack vectors, you will admit that it's not perfect. But when it comes to actual SSL encryption, I haven't seen anything better. So really what we're going to do is Substratum is going to figure out how do we sell login to another organization, yet keep track of it. How do we orchestrate other private nodes, swapping keys between them to create a secure and confident environment to run data storage in? And how the hell do we deploy these updates and do a continuous integration, continuous deployment for interplanetary file system nodes, and even our networking service, which will be a very important concept. And then I need to, or I'd like to, use something called Caddy, which is a cool project that does HTTPS proxy serving with SSL, which is the biggest bitch and a half for most things that anyone does because it requires other certificate authorities, where IPFS doesn't use that. It uses a different protocol to be able to use TLS instead of using SSL in the fashion that HTTPS does. It doesn't rely on certificate authorities. It just relies on its own encryption handshake, which is very cool and honestly very much needed. So Substratum's goal is to merge the distributed nature of the internet and how we scale with the non-distributed Web 2.0 concepts. And I want to sell as much as this I can to someone else. So login's going to be sold to someone else. Private network key is what we're going to own. I'm going to try to find tools that do this part for us, CI/CD. We're probably going to develop in-house, but we need to publish all the work that makes that possible. And the HTTPS IPFS CDN host, this is in-house because I haven't found anything that implements it the way I want. I want no access to HTTP for IPFS. None. I want no man-in-the-middle attack vectors. That's the biggest thing I find to be an issue with IPFS right now, is the fact that it even allows HTTP simply because HTTPS is too fucking hard. But Caddy and other tools solve this, so in a deployment, I want to make sure that you hit a 404 page that's like a cool planetary or cool page that says, "Hey, jackass, you're trying to connect insecurely. Here's this page could even have been manipulated without you realizing. Please use HTTPS from now on, redirecting you, right? That kind of thing." But I don't even want to redirect because a redirect could be tampered with because man in the middle. It's all about if you're a big enough target. And that's really what hacking is all about. So you need to make sure you minimize from the get-go your capability to be hacked, because once you do become big, you're an easy target and they will find your Achilles heel. So you have to reduce exposing that heel as much as you can. So Stratum Network is going to build off of this file storage, this communication, and even queuing concept that I'm hoping to have built in Substratum. And it's going to expose that to as a web service or as a offering that, hey, here's the tools, here's how we ran our infrastructure, and here's how it just gets updated. But you can run it on your own command line, your own servers, and your own Amazon. But nothing's easy. So we do it for you. That'll be the badass part. So there's some aspects where WebAssembly, which is what Substrate accomplishes, but I don't want coins. I don't want tokens. I don't want gas. It's all fucking bullshit, in my opinion. Functional controllers is what I want to target, where we can mimic the model view controller web server pattern or web API, so that way you can hit it with HTTPS, or even IPFS doesn't really solve this problem, but some form of external communication API to pass a representational state transfer compliant URL and allow that to have functions execute on the WebAssembly layer. Now, functional proxy gateway, now this is the biggest thing. So HTTPS should be exposed but separated from the concern of all of the logic layers. Because one thing I've learned is HTTPS contexts are single-threaded. You cannot ask the database for the data while asking for images, while asking for other things. It's sequential, and it really sucks. I just want to say, hey, they've logged in. They are not a malicious peer that we found before. They're not blocked by the web application firewall, a WAF. So let them through. And then you hit the logic, but the logic layer should be able to be asynchronous and really divide and conquer. Today, modern web server technology, if deployed on a server, is incapable of that. And the reason we scale is because we only have one thread per process. But if what we could do is reduce that to one thread per process per user, right, for the actual HTTP communication, the API protocol, but have all the others be able to spin up as many threads as they feel like to get the work done fast and return the result. That's what I'm looking for, and I think that's where a peer or node that runs an HTTPS fronted proxy while also having functional logic that can redirect you to a controller or other Lambda-like, function-like packages, you're going to find that development will become a lot simpler. You'll have less concern about what necessarily the technologies are running on, and you'll just have more concern on how do you write the code you need to write to get the job done. Less about is it secure, yada yada yada, and how do we host it. It'll be a lot simpler. So what IPFS does, or lib peer-to-peer does, is it abstracts away the concept of IPs, which IPs is kind of what's holding us back at the moment, where server technology has a internet protocol identifier, an IP. And the problem with that is when you want to run multiple virtual machines, you now have a internal IP, and all this shit gets in the way of creating true scalable architecture, because you don't want to be running too many servers, you don't want to be having too many IPs to manage. It starts to get real complex. But what lib peer-to-peer does is it removes IP from your equation. You just run many nodes, and if they have internet access to each other, and it's not on an intranet, it can talk to each other. And if it has the right encryption key, it's part of the same private network, right? And it's able to communicate. And that's really what we're trying to solve. So if you add a compute layer and a storage layer to that, pretty much you have what web applications need today to function. And that's badass. And it creates a distributed manner of doing that. Yeah, this headset's going to die any second now. So, without further ado, this is my update. I went from storage chain to substratum networks, from people chain or human chain, like the human centipede scaries my friend was concerned about. I went to stratum network because it more embodies what I'm trying to describe here. And community stream is really what I really aspire to build as a social media, to say fuck you to YouTube and all these other companies who just steal our data, who use it without permission, who write it all in legal speak, or don't defend the content creators. They just they let Disney or other record companies just say, okay, copyright, because we own something that sounds similar, and they don't do the research to find out that this person crafted all themselves and it falls under fair use. But people are fucking greedy assholes and they don't want to get sued, so they just take the side of the large company, and I'm sick of it. That's not the point of view of social media. You're supposed to have the people's back. You're supposed to have content creators and viewers' backs at the same time, not fucking companies who supposedly send ads on your network. Fuck you. So I want freedom of speech. I want fair moderation and communication, like terms of service, plain English, 5 bullets or something that says here's what we don't allow, and paper trails of every action done on the platform that can be audited by the public. And people, teams like the company Community Stream behind those decisions. And I want copyright consultation for content creators when maybe they do break copyright laws. And how can we mitigate their efforts, because they're monetizing on our platform, making us money, but also they're trying to make money for themselves. And the problem is when you ask a creator to delete all 400 videos they've made for the past 4 to 5 years, maybe more, you're asking them to give up their livelihood to then redo their livelihood, and now they ask themselves, should I get a fucking job? And what you've done is you've created a platform that isn't something people want to be on. Isn't something people believe in anymore. And that's a problem. So that's why I have a dove here. That's content ownership. It will solely be the content creator or publishers. It not only distributes the liability appropriately to the people who created it, but also reaffirms that just because I'm hosting it, just because I showed it to a user, doesn't fucking make it mine. I do not have that right. I should be paying you if I want to advertise with it. I should be talking to you if I want to do anything to it. If I want to remove it, there should be a UI that shows removed, kind of like Reddit does, where it says deleted. It may not be able to show you everything, but there should be a record and an ID that shows the paper trail of why it was removed. And you should be able to know how to get there. And the truth is YouTube and other platforms don't have that. I think Twitter has done a great job with how they handle it. They have some nuance I can't stand with their character limits and such, but I really believe they're in the right direction. But I still think that they're not a platform. They're a publisher at a certain point. So Community Stream will more than likely be a platform in certain respects and a publisher in others, because where we inflict our terms of service, we are inflicting our opinion on that freedom of speech. For example, violence. Violence with protests could show shooting rubber bullets. Twitter could choose to say that's violent and remove it, or they could choose that this is freedom of speech and we need people to be able to see this. The problem is that's a huge gray area. They're no longer a platform when you choose one politician who posts it is violent versus one citizen who posts it isn't. It's a tricky balance. So you need to be honest that you're a publisher. You're people inflicting your ethics, your understanding of the content, and if it should stay on the platform. But you should give a fucking reason why you removed it and make it easily audible, but also have the community able to ask for it back when they feel the organization of 3,000 people out of the billion who use it were wrong. And they should be able to say you're wrong. And not be demonetized, those kind of things. So really looking forward to figuring out how I can create a cloud platform that competes with Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, and Google, DigitalOcean, and all that, while taking advantage of their own innovations of technology, but utilizing abstract concepts like IPFS, lib peer-to-peer compute layers that I want to work on that will mimic something like Substrate, but without coins. So I'm really excited about this. Truthfully, I'm in over my head. It's been a real journey to kind of really solve what I'm looking for here, and if it has a return on investment, if it has value, and I really believe it does, but more to come. So thanks for listening to my update. 30 minutes, not too bad of me rambling. So that's the update. This is version 1.2. You can go to my GitLab with the Traiforce Group LLC Roadmap, and I have my PNG here. It's not updated. Is it updated? Oof, I gotta update that. So I gotta update that. Right now my draw.io is up to date. I need to re-export the PNG. I have a few things here. I might just remove them. It's really not serving me. Um, yeah. So thanks for listening, and I'm gonna repost this on YouTube. I'm the Rambling Developer. Feel free to follow, subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot more rambles, but I'm going to try to keep it within my business context and what I'm trying to accomplish in the industry and how I feel it ethically aligns with what I'm seeing in the world and how I can use my skills to make a difference. So, thanks. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.